Welcome back to the news at 10. A yet-to-be-identified man has threatened to commit suicide by climbing a telecommunications mast in Jalingo, the Taraba state capital. According to eyewitnesses, no one could have guessed the man's intentions when he was seen approaching the mast with chains around his waist. It was only when he discovered that he was at the top of the structure that he started shouting and throwing down papers with inscriptions demanding to see the general overseer of the Synagogue Church of All Nations. Security operatives have arrived at the scene in an attempt to bring him down in the dark without rousing his suspicion. Now, members of the Nigerian Medical Association have threatened to continue their agitation over the death of a pediatrician at the Obafemi Awolowo University Teaching Hospital, Ile-Ife, until justice is done. The professor of endocrinology and chairman, Medical Advisory Committee, was killed while on national assignment in Edo State. Various associations under the NMA took to the streets in Ile-Ife and Osogbo in Osun State to register their displeasure over the incident. They called on the federal government to reassess its security strategies in the event of increasing armed banditry on Nigerian roads. The Osun State Commissioner of Police, Abiodun Ige, gave the doctors the assurance that the force is looking into the matter. From security, let's take a look at some business news. Here's Teniola Shobowale.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial star 894 hash now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Ijoma. Welcome to Business News. One of the three leading rating agencies in the world, Fitch, has cut Nigeria's 2020 economic outlook from stable to negative, while retaining the country's B+ credit status. Fitch's new report based Nigeria's stable revision on the increasing vulnerability of the economy under the current macro policy environment. The agency says Nigeria's key credit parameters could worsen if a sharp devaluation of the naira occurs. Fitch forecasts Nigeria's deficit hit 4.4% of GDP in 2019, but stable in 2020, with inflation seen at average 13% in 2020 to 2021 period. Now, the federal government has announced plans to automate all import exemption certificates. The initiative, according to the permanent secretary in charge of special duties at the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Mohammed Dikwa, will reduce the number of hours involved in securing the certificate. Speaking at a meeting in Abuja, he explains that the automation process is also in line with the federal government's drive towards generating more revenue and job creation.
The continuous incidence of revenue losses due to manual processing of applications, incidence of multiple use of IDEC approvals, delay in processing applications, indiscriminate allocations, and subjectivity in the approval process has remained a major constraint in the monitoring, evaluation, and standardizing the process of granting waivers and certificates. In order to address these challenges, the ministry have keyed into the priority programs of this administration, which is to grow the economy.
Now, oil prices fell today, but still managed to post its third straight week of gains amid the easing of U.S.-Chinese trade tensions. International oil price benchmark Brent crude fell 0.7% to $66.06 a barrel, while U.S. WTI crude dropped 1.2% to settle at $60.44, but ended the week with a 0.5% gain. Analysts say some selling ahead of the Christmas season and New Year's Day holidays was pushing prices lower, while a rise in the U.S. oil rig count also added some pressure. Meanwhile, traders hint that progress in the trade dispute between the world's two biggest oil consumers has raised expectations of higher energy demand next year. Now, Friday's trading session at the NSE ends further in the red, following more losses from listed high-value and mid-cap equities. Layo Adegoke tells us more.
Thanks a lot, Teniola, and welcome to the Stock Market Report. More losses from some high-value equities pushed the NSE's main indicators further down by 0.22% today as investors end the third week of December in the red. Now, this comes after a third round of profit-taking on 4 Tier 1 lenders hit the banking sector index, as well as the shares of Guinness Nigeria, Dangote Sugar, GlaxoSmithKline, and Cadbury. However, that had no impact on the consumer goods sector index, which rose by 0.83%. While losses from 23 equities led by PZ Cussons contributed to an additional 28 billion naira drop in total market value. Meanwhile, the share price of Nigerian breweries recorded a 9.96% increase to lead a pack of 12 gainers, while the shares of Union Diagnostics contributed almost half of 341.61 million total units of shares traded today. Well, that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Layo Adegoke. Back to you, Teniola.
Thanks, Layo. Meanwhile, it's mostly positive close for major global stock markets as relief over trade tensions between the US and China boosts investors' sentiment. Here are some of Friday's closing figures. And that's business news tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Back to you, Ijeoma.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Teniola. UK MPs have backed Prime Minister Boris Johnson's plan for the country to leave the EU on January the 31st, 2020. They voted 358 to 234, a majority of 124, in favour of the EU Withdrawal Agreement Bill, which now goes on for further scrutiny in Parliament. Let's head off to our London studios now. Here's Juliana Olayinka with Around the World in 5.
Good evening from the Channel's newsroom in London. The former chief executive of the French telecoms group Orange has been sentenced to 12 months in prison for moral harassment that prompted a spate of suicides during a restructuring at the company in the late 2000s. Additionally, Orange, which was called France Telecom at the time, was ordered by a Paris court to pay €3.5 million in fines and damages to scores of families and employees in a landmark ruling. The trial focused on 39 cases between 2006 and 2009. This involved 19 suicides, 12 suicide attempts and 8 cases of serious depression.
Nous sommes là dans un domaine qui est les méthodes de management qui étaient en quelque sorte en dehors de la régulation et du droit. Avec cette décision, on comprend enfin de quelle manière on doit gérer le personnel des entreprises et c'est un gage finalement que les errements de l'affaire France Télécom ne se reproduiront plus.
Thousands of protests have continued across several cities in India, defying the government's sweeping controls on demonstrations following deadly countrywide civil unrest. During the past week, at least 7 people have been killed during violent clashes with police. At the centre of the discontent is a new Citizenship Amendment Act, a law which promises to fast-track citizenship for non-Muslim religious minorities. Critics fear the law undermines India's secular constitution and say faith should not be the basis of citizenship. A UK-based war monitor claimed that at least 72 people have been killed in Syria in the last 24 hours from regional airstrikes. The data from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights comes as this footage was released online of a young girl trapped under a collapsed wall and debris being rescued in the town of Talmadik in the northwest of the country. The region, including Idlib, is the last significant swathe of Syrian territory still in insurgents' hands after 8.5 years of war. China's President Xi Jinping has warned against external interference in Macau's politics during a ceremony marking the 20th anniversary of the country's handover to Beijing from Portugal.
处理这两个特别行政区的事务，完全是中国内政，用不着任何外部势力指手画脚。
His comments come after months of disruptive protests in Hong Kong. Just after his speech, a few dozen people in the central business district staged a protest.
China has been always flexing its financial muscles overseas, in Africa, in Sri Lanka, in Solomon Islands, in everywhere in the world. They are basically interfering in everywhere's internal affairs. And now when other countries want to say something on their behalf about about their interest in China, in Hong Kong, in Macau, or in Taiwan, then they say it's foreign interference. It is, I mean, a very, very blatant double standard here.
Demonstrations initially opposed a controversial extradition bill, but have since transformed into a wider movement calling for further autonomy from Beijing. UK lawmakers have approved Prime Minister Boris Johnson's plans for the country to leave the EU on the 31st of January. The Withdrawal Agreement Bill has ruled out an extension of the transition period, during which the UK is out of the EU, but follows many of its rules past 2020.
The ayes to the right were 358. The noes to the left were 234. So the ayes have it, the ayes have it.
Andrew Bailey has been appointed the next governor of the Bank of England. Bailey previously held a position at the bank for 30 years, where he was central to efforts to shore up the British banking system during the global financial crisis. He will take over from Mark Carney, who steps down in March next year. And finally, an eco-friendly alternative to tackling the world's plastic pollution problem. A young Vietnamese entrepreneur has converted hollow grass into reusable, biodegradable straws. Tran Minh Tien uses grass stems that grow near his village on the banks of the Mekong River Delta to produce zero-waste drinking straws. Vietnam is the fourth largest contributor to marine plastic pollution globally. The grass stems are cut to 8-inch lengths before they're baked in an oven and left to harden in the sun for up to 3 days. Tien claims the finished products are durable, produce zero waste and can last up to 6 months. And that's your international news around the world in 5.
Thanks a lot, Juliana. Still ahead on the news at 10, Arsenal appoint Mikel Arteta as new head coach on a 3.5-year deal. That's on sports. You stay with us.